It's time now for County-Wide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's County-Wide.
Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to the program. It is County-Wide. Brad Miller with you, and we're happy to welcome into the studio Yavapai County Sheriff Scott Mascher is here. We're going to talk about a number of things today. Our time will be so short, Sheriff. We always have a lot to chat about. But good day.
Good morning.
Welcome. Good to have you come on in with us today. The first one I want to get to. There's been a lot. There's been some media coverage already with yourself and the Board of Supervisors talking about some issues at the jail, and there's an awful lot to talk about. So I want to just kind of get right to that, and it seems like there's a couple of kind of things that if I'm understanding it correctly, and that is, I think because of the sequester, there's been a reduction or an elimination of what some federal rental of bed space at the jail facility, and that's one issue. But also, we're going to be kind of coming up here. In fact, we're in our kind of glide pattern into the end of the jail district tax. Is that right?
2019, the jail district tax has a sunset.
The sunset, so 5 years out, basically.
Yeah, a little over 5 years.
Okay. Well, now let's start with that, because that seems like a pretty big issue. But just, you were giving Paul and I some historical points on this, and we're 15 years into that 20-year voter-approved tax. And as that goes away, obviously, that's going to be something that the Board of Supervisors is going to have to look at.
That is going to be an important priority for the Board of Supervisors to seriously take a look at. Prior to a jail district, how the funding worked is that, say, one of the local municipalities, Cottonwood, Sedona, Clarkdale, arrested someone, brought them to the county jail, they paid for that inmate.
They being the city or town?
The city or town
Sedona, Cottonwood, PD. Gotcha.
So when the jail district was proposed back in 1999, the cities, towns, of course, were in support of it because it took that funding of inmates away from them and put it into the Board of Supervisors. And they went out to the public, they being the Board of Supervisors, in looking to get a 1/4 cent of a sales tax rather than property tax or any other means. And it was voted in with a 20-year life expectancy. So the year 2019, that district will dissolve unless the board decides to go back out to the public to extend the sunset and maybe even increase a 1/4 cent of that.
Would an increase
tax
be, I mean, just inflationary? It seems like an increase would probably be part of this. Do we know yet?
I think that is something that they will take a serious look at. I think it's very beneficial to have that 1/4 cent. Right now, the jail district, the tax we get, and much of that money comes from transient tourists and visitors into the county. Yeah. But that money we get isn't enough to pay for the jail. So I think with that additional 1/4 cent, that would really help out pay for the overall cost of the jail. That's why we were renting the beds, to offset that shortfall from the tax.
Okay. So an additional up to a 1/2 cent.
It would be up to a 1/2 cent.
Would be your recommendation to the board?
I would say yes, that they should consider that. Now, they may have some other options and things to look at. That's something that the responsibility through statute, the obligation, is for the Board of Supervisors to look at those fundings. As the sheriff, my obligation by statute is to run the jails. And so that's what I do. But the board funds it, determines how to pay for it and those things. But that is one of the options I think they need to take a serious look at.
You don't have any facts and figures in front of you, but just ballpark, how many inmates at any given time, or say on an annual average, are housed?
Well, lately, yes, I can. Averaging with the Marshall inmates, we were getting up 550 to 600. Okay. Once we lost the Marshals, now we're down around 480, 500. We have a total of 600 beds here currently open and being operated in Camp Verde.
Right. When this jail was built, was it with the intention that there would be those extra beds, and was there already kind of an agreement in place or an understanding in place to rent bed space to?
No, at that time, and if we go back to 1999 with the jail district in that time frame, Yavapai County was under federal mandates because of overcrowding.
Okay.
We had 125 beds in Prescott with 300 inmates in there. It was way overcrowded.
I can remember those days.
Yeah, it was some bad times for the jail and the sheriff's office. Because of those civil rights issues of inmates dealing with overcrowding, various things, we had some mandates we had to remediate, and part of it was to build additional bed space.
Right.
At that time, we were getting well over 600 inmates. Between 99 and up to about 2008, we saw 6.7% yearly increase or more of inmates coming into the facility. The county population was growing at about 4.7%. The inmate population was about 6.7%, or right around there. So it was actually increasing more.
Yeah.
What we did see, Brad, is when we had that economic downturn in 2008, the big downturn, you would think that when the economy goes bad, crime would probably go up.
Yeah.
But it didn't.
Is
In
that right?
Yavapai County, it went down. That tells us what a great place we live in. And so that bought us some time.
Okay.
We actually saw a reduction in inmates in the jail. We had the judicial branch of government here in Yavapai County do the early disposition courts.
Yeah.
We had pretrial services. We had judges looking at people who needed to be in jail, needed to be there, but those who had a job, have been here for years, they're raising a family, maybe they needed to be on work release, you know, come in and spend the nights, but not all day. They could go out and provide for their families. They started taking a closer look at that, and that actually helped us drop.
That creative sentencing, if that's the right term, has been kind of a national trend,
yes,
hasn't it?
It is.
Yeah, and I know, I think it was Judge Brutinel that brought in the EDC.
It was.
And as I understand it, that really made a big impact. You mentioned it, that early disposition court.
Right.
And so that's what we've kind of been floating along on, is all of those things working.
And it does work, and it's worked very well for our jail. The people that are in jail need to be there, the ones that are there now. Yeah. And unfortunately, we're starting to see that county population of inmates go up.
History tells us that as the economy improves, the bad guys are doing either better or worse, depends on how you want to look at it.
Yeah, the last sheriff asked me at one point to try to correlate economic conditions with jail populations. And I went back and researched, back even through the Great Depression, where even with the Great Depression, we saw a decrease nationally in prison populations. Now, what does that mean? Are people looking out for each other? Are they helping each other? I don't know, but you would think that because of the bad times, you would see more crime. Right. Nationally,
people are desperate.
They're desperate. Times are bad.
Interesting.
But we saw a decline, as we did here during this economic downturn.
Okay. Sheriff, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about the impact of kind of losing those federal dollars.
Sure.
And where that's going to kind of play. We'll take a short break. Our guest today is Sheriff Scott Mascher, Yavapai County Sheriff. We'll be back right after this.
Having a fire escape plan is very important to keep your family safe and together in the event of a fire. When you awake to the sound of a smoke detector and smoke in your room, don't stand straight up. Carefully roll off your bed and stay low under the smoke. If your door is shut, feel the door with the back of your hand. Slowly open the door if no heat is felt. Always stay low until you get to the outside of your home. Always have 2 ways out of your house and a specified meeting place somewhere outside your home. Home escape plans should be drawn up and rehearsed on a regular basis. This could be the difference between life and death if caught in a fire.
Move over, AZ. Arizona's move over law requires you to move over or slow down when you drive past any vehicle pulled over with flashing lights. Any vehicle means emergency responders, roadside assistance, law enforcement, highway crews, even stranded motorists. Ignore the law and you could pay a fine. Remember, every vehicle, every time. Move over, AZ.
Sponsored by ADOT in partnership with the Arizona Broadcasters Association and this station.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language. and spot a stroke fast.
We welcome you back. Excuse me. We welcome you back to the program. It's Countywide. Brad Miller with you, and our guest today is Yavapai County Sheriff Scott Mascher, talking about some issues so far in the show with the jail. Going to be some serious considerations from the sheriff's office, those who run the jail, and the Yavapai County Board of Supervisors. The essentially the funding for the jail district runs out in 5 years. That was set up from the get-go. That was what was approved by voters.
Right.
And is this going to be something the voters that'll have to end up going back to the voters?
Yeah, it's going to
extend it?
Well,
the
voters have to decide if this is what they want.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it'll be the public in Yavapai County deciding if they want to continue at that jail district, see a jail in Prescott open up 24/7 and be operating there in the Prescott area. Here on the Verde side, we have a great operation going.
Yeah. The cities and towns, it seems, are going to be I can't predict what they'll do, but I would imagine be in support of kind of continuing how it's going.
The mayor in Prescott, Mayor Kirkendall, came forward publicly, said he'd support 100% moving ahead with and keeping the jail district solvent and whole and extending the life expectancy. So that was nice to see him get up and say that publicly.
Yeah, makes sense. We'll see how it plays as this discussion continues for the next couple of years. Let's talk about those beds and the federal dollars that have been lost because of that. Now, this is a sequester issue.
Well, and I think it may be somewhat of an operational issue as well with the feds. I didn't really sit down and ask them why this happened. Yeah. But, you know, it's unfortunate it occurred for us because that's really helped us out here in Yavapai County, offset, you know, the tax dollars.
Sure. Now, when we say feds, is this immigration?
Well, we work directly with the bed rentals with the Marshal's office.
U.S. Marshal.
The U.S. Marshal, the United States Marshal. And kind of what happened with that, Brad, is we look back a few years ago when we were having that huge increase of illegal immigration coming into Yavapai County, and you could see it. I mean, there were corners with lots of illegals looking for jobs, day labor kind of stuff. It was a big, hot issue nationally. And so we started to look in Yavapai County how that was affecting us, especially at the sheriff's office and the jail. We saw 20-some% of our population in the jail was illegal immigrants. And so we started to look at how we could get these folks adjudicated and get them deported. They're here illegally. So we began working with ICE, the Immigration Customs Enforcement. They in turn agreed to get us trained and certified where we could have jurisdiction to stop, detain, determine if they were here illegally, get them through an adjudication process of why we detained them, and then deport them. What that caused was our 20% of those illegals in the jail had dropped down to about 3 or 4%. Now,
in other words, we had YCSO deputies who had gone through the training that you described, and essentially, is it fair to say that they were kind of, in a sense, deputized by the U.S. Marshal's office?
Well, no,
maybe
this
not
was
formally.
ICE. This was ICE.
Or ICE, rather. That's what I mean. But in effect, they were kind of working that way?
Exactly. They were an extension of ICE. They were trained to stop, detain, and determine if they were here illegally.
Now, wasn't Yavapai County one of really just a few that did that, or did all the counties?
Nationally, there was maybe 80. 83 local jurisdictions that were able to get through this program. Why so few, I don't know. But we were able to do it, and it was very successful for us, and is still successful for us because we're still doing it with ICE now.
I heard somewhere along the way, and I don't know if it was, gosh, excuse me, might have been even yourself, but I think it came from YCSO some years ago. When we talk about illegal immigration problems in Arizona, a lot of focus is on the border and the crossings and the illegal crossings. But Yavapai County, with its I-17 especially, and some of the other highway systems on the west side of the county, is a main transportation corridor that many of those folks, wherever they cross the border at whatever point that is, end up kind of getting funneled northward. It makes sense if you just geographically look at our state.
Well, it does.
To get to points north, you're going to come right through this area, and that's where it's come from.
That's exactly what we saw. We've seen a huge decrease in it. What I think a lot of these illegal immigrant coyotes, or the people who get paid to get them to the destination they're going, is they look to see who's actively enforcing the federal laws.
Right.
And we are here in Yavapai County. So believe it or not, they're starting to go around us, which is fine. It's, you know, the big thing for us here in Yavapai County is we have focused our efforts now primarily on those illegal immigrants who are drug smuggling.
Right.
And that's where we've focused our efforts currently. And our canine guys are doing a great job with that.
We hear and when I say we, I mean Paul David and I in the newsroom, and through there, our listeners. It seems like we get little kind of waves on that, and I don't know if that's enforcement or if it's just. Well, I had G.R. Manera from DPS in here a week or two ago, and he said, "Hey, it's picking season.
Yeah,
crop's in." I mean, I'm a old farm boy, and so to me that just conjures a whole different image. But he says that's why we've seen a little bit of a spike recently in seizures and arrests because it's just that time of year.
It is, and the other thing we're starting to see more trends on. Unfortunately, is heroin. We're starting to see more heroin coming in and across the border now as well. Yeah. So the drug of preference changes. Yeah. And so things change with the business.
5 years ago, all we talked about was methamphetamine.
Right.
And it's not gone by any means, but boy, we just don't seem to see it. I don't know.
Not like we used to. And before that was cocaine, and before that was marijuana. And so it all, you know, it changes with preference. Yeah.
We got away from the jail bed issue a tiny bit, but it's important to know how those beds are getting filled and why. Let me come back to that a tiny bit, though. The financial impact then of losing the feds is a pretty good nut. And it needs to be recovered? I mean, do those funds go to operational costs?
Yes. That money is going to have to be made up somewhere. What we've done since 2007, 2008, when we really started to focus on renting bed space, and what people don't realize, and I think it's important to know that we have the 600 beds. If we have 500 inmates, or 600 inmates, it still costs the same amount of staffing to run it, because the staff is put on post assignments. So there's not an inmate to staff ratio.
Gotcha.
It's what is your assignment at the jail. So being up to 500 and having open beds, we really pushed hard to rent them. And then the money it costs to house those inmates is relatively small. We feed them, we provide some medical. Right. But the staffing is already there. That's your main cost. So that money we were getting actually was a good solid number yearly. And since 07, 08, we generated actually over $9 million. Yeah. That's a lot of money to offset that $0.25 of a jail district tax that didn't pay for the jail.
Right.
So the county was really looking at that every year and including that into the budget, because we were getting a yearly amount of almost $2 million. Right. So you know that's coming in year after year, and you start accounting for that. Once it goes away, now we need to look at, okay, how are we going to pick up that money? Where are we going to look at that shortfall? How's that going to be covered?
And as the Board of Supervisors looks at that 5-year sunset kind of beginning to close,
that's now looming even bigger.
We're going to have to factor all that in as well.
Right.
All right. Sheriff, that's great. When we come back, let's talk about some fun stuff.
Sure.
Not that this isn't fun. This is informative, but serious business, and a lot of big decisions will be made here in the coming years about the jail. But there's a real effort underway about kind of collecting some YCSO memorabilia, if you will.
Good stuff, yeah.
Some good stuff. And I want to talk to Sheriff Scott Mascher about that when we come back to Countywide right after this.
Having a fire escape plan is very important to keep your family safe and together in the event of a fire. When you awake to the sound of a smoke detector and smoke in your room, don't stand straight up. Carefully roll off your bed and stay low under the smoke. If your door is shut, feel the door with the back of your hand. Slowly open the door if no heat is felt. Always stay low until you get to the outside of your home. Always have 2 ways out of your house and a specified meeting place somewhere outside your home. Home escape plans should be drawn up and rehearsed on a regular basis. This could be the difference between life and death if caught in a fire.
Move over, AZ. Arizona's move over law requires you to move over or slow down when you drive past any vehicle pulled over with flashing lights. Any vehicle means emergency responders, roadside assistance, law enforcement, highway crews, even stranded motorists. Ignore the law and you could pay a fine. Remember, every vehicle, every time. Move over, AZ.
Sponsored by ADOT in partnership with the Arizona Broadcasters Association and this station.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
Welcome back to the program. It's Countywide, and Sheriff Scott Mascher is with us. Want to talk a little bit about what's, already underway, but will be coming in display form, and that is YCSO is, am I saying it right, collecting different weapons, badges? Right. Just tell me what's
historic.
Kind of going on.
Well, first off, I'm very surprised. You know, this next year is going to be the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office 150th anniversary.
Yeah.
And we've been serving the communities and public here since that time, 1864. And so I'm surprised no one has ever collected an official, formal, inventoried historical memorabilia, artifacts, photographs. So we actually started that a few years ago, and we're getting quite a collection in. We've located families who great-great-grandfathers in the 1800s were working as a deputy in the sheriff's office, and they still have the gun and badge. And, and so they've brought these things forward, and we're starting to get a really good collection to where we opened some talk with Charlotte Hall Museum. Mm-hmm. They're very interested. I went to one of their board of directors meetings. It was pretty much unanimous that they would like to do an exhibit probably next year on the sheriff's office and all over Yavapai County.
Sure.
We're getting things from Ash Fork, from Congress, from Black Canyon. You know, people have heard about this and know someone who has contacted us or family members who have things that they're bringing forward. It's a great collection.
And so along that line, any of our listeners or viewers today, if they had great uncle One Eye Johnson was, a deputy or in some way involved with law enforcement, maybe they've got some memorabilia, and you'd be happy to take a look at that.
We would love to hear. We would love to hear from any of the listeners who know of any kind of old memorabilia or artifacts.
How neat!
It really is. Yeah. It's a really.
Do we know when this will be? I mean, for the anniversary's coming up, so I assume it'll jibe with that. There'll be some kind of this, and there'll be a permanent display. At your office?
There will be. Yes, and Charlotte Hall will collect and take some of that over for their exhibit, and then we'll be getting it back to display again. And what we're hoping to do is set up a certain day where we can bring tours in to show the public at our office what it is we have.
Gotcha. Is there a phone number, Sheriff, that folks can, is the general number to the county, I suppose?
Yeah, the straight 771-3260 is into our front desk.
Gotcha.
And they can call there and ask for information. But we have a volunteer named Brendan Fillingham who is the one in charge of or is running the exhibit program, the project. And so he's the one who's really going to be setting it up and has already given some tours.
Awesome. 771-3260. If you've got a piece of history tucked away in a drawer or who knows where, YCSO is interested as they come up on their 150th anniversary. Sheriff, always good to talk to you. We appreciate you taking your time.
Thank you.
Coming to see us again today. It's Countywide, and we'll see you next time.
This has been Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Listen in each Tuesday and Thursday as we tackle the hot topics and talk to the decision makers across Yavapai County. That's Countywide with Brad Miller and Paul David each Tuesday and Thursday on this Yavapai Broadcasting station.